Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on the time zone you're watching us. Thank you for joining our today's webinar. We are back with another interesting topic. It's a series of webinar around SAP Signavio, which seems to be the buzzword across social media, SAP meetings across. So we would want to demystify and cover and give the knowledge as much as possible during our these series of webinar series. Now, the topic of the webinar series is achieving business process excellence in SAP S/4HANA transformation with SAP Signavio. And to demystify this, I have on the panel today two experienced gentlemen in this area. Mr. Sridhar, he is the head YASH BPM practice and BPM solution. He's there with us for last 22 years, handling SAP Technical and SAP Infra Services. Also, Mr. Eknath, he's the Associate Director, YASH Business Practice, which is our consulting arm, and into BPM Solutions. Next slide, please. Right. So a quick overview or the brief overview of the topics that will be covered in the four-part webinar series. The first episode is about the overview of SAP Signavio and how it helps the SAP S/4HANA transformation. In the second episode, we would cover on process mining and continuous process improvement, leveraging SAP Signavio, which is again important topic. The third episode predominantly we'll be covering on process modeling and documentation with SAP Signavio, leveraging SAP best practices. And the last episode, which is going to be around process analysis and optimization technique, leveraging SAP Signavio Process Insight with live demo. Now, before moving ahead for the presentation, so something about YASH. So we are a 27 years old company. We are a SAP Gold partner, and also we have 50 plus COEs. With 8,500 plus employees, and around 60% of that is predominantly working on SAP technologies, various services. And we are also the right size partner. So we believe in large enough to care and large enough to transform and small enough to care. I'm sorry for that. We are headquartered at East Moreland, US. And can we just move to the next slide? Just showcase. Yeah, so these are our COEs and the office locations across geography. Now, as discussed earlier, coming on to the today's agenda, that is SAP Signavio overview and how it helps in SAP S/4HANA transformation. So I would like to hand over the presentation to Mr. Sridhar, if you can take that up.
Sure. Thank you, Naveen. Once again, let me take this opportunity to welcome you all. Thank you for joining us. So my name is Sridhar, and I am also kind of joined with Eknath, one of our colleagues. I mean, we both actually are involved in setting up the Signavio practice at YASH and also implementing Signavio already for a couple of customers. The way in which we also have designed this as a webinar series is also to kind of help share our experiences around Signavio, understand how, I mean, basically share our experience in terms of helping customers in understanding how Signavio can be helpful in, transformations. I mean, we have been using this term transformation loosely for a long time. Especially in the context of SAP S/4 transformations, SAP S/4 implementations, be it a greenfield, brownfield, bluefield, whatever it is, how the tool set like Signavio can be leveraged, and then what are our experiences. I mean, we really wanted to share. I mean, because we also have implemented, we have alongside with one of our customers, we also participated in the Signavio events that were conducted by SAP in Arizona a couple of months ago, wherein one of our customers was also a keynote speaker. So we will actually take you through all those experiences, take you through all those lessons, some of the issues that we have noticed and so on. So that's considering all that. I mean, we designed this as a 4 series webinar. And once again, we would not want to bore you through the typical slide deck and then take you through some of the content here and there, but we wanted to take you through the tool set in itself. We wanted to show the tool in action in at least 2 of our upcoming webinars. In one of the webinars, we would also like to cover process intelligence. We would also like to cover process insights. These are the 2 key components wherein we would also want to showcase a live demo. That said, as far as today's session is concerned, we wanted to obviously introduce the overall suite as a holistic suite, as a transformation suite, and what is it all about. I mean, what all various different subcomponents exist as a Signavio suite inside that, and also each of those components, what capabilities do those bring to the table. We would quickly touch upon those topics. And one of the important use cases of Signavio is one of the important use cases, let me emphasize on that front, is for S4 implementations. How do we tackle the typical SAP S4HANA implementation challenges leveraging SAP Signavio? What it means by data-driven transformations, and what it means by process-driven transformations. I mean, we will quickly touch upon those topics. And there is a concept called plug and gain from SAP. I mean, that is the term that SAP uses, which also makes sense in a lot of these transformations. We'll also, if not in this session, maybe in one of the upcoming sessions, we will touch upon the plug and gain approach as well, and how that actually helps and accelerates the overall implementation in the first place. And as part of today's introductory webinar session, we also wanted to introduce and quickly demo some of the key components of Signavio. Obviously, I mean, there is only so much time that is there for today's session. So we would actually cover as many as topics that we could today. But this being a series and designed it that we also designed it that way, we would also cover each of these components in a deeper manner in the subsequent webinar series as well, sessions as well. We also have a Q&A session towards the end, but I mean, if you have any questions, please do feel free to type it in the QA of the Zoom tool, and I mean, we would be more than happy to answer those questions during the session in itself. All right, let's move on quickly. The Signavio tool set. I mean, I'm sure you're aware that Signavio as a tool set or a Signavio organization has been acquired by SAP around a couple of years ago now. You would have already heard of process mining as a concept, I mean, by various other tool sets. But Signavio goes beyond process mining. It is actually truly a transformation suite as SAP positions that also. And we also have seen this. In fact, I mean, the very customer example that I was giving earlier, right? We have used this for success factors transformation. We have used this tool set for understanding success factors and HR processes, how those can be bettered across some 40 and odd countries where their HR personnel are around and various operations exist for them and so on. So, but in today's context, I mean, we will actually talk about SAP S4 transformation a little more. But before that, let me quickly introduce various tool sets, various sub-components inside the Signavio as a transformation suite. This is an end-to-end transformation suite. When we say end-to-end transformation suite and process transformation suite, what does it mean? This is the tool set that could be used, one tool set that could be used to, design the processes, define the processes, document the processes. When I say documentation, I'm not referring to PowerPoint presentations, Excel sheets, Word documents, and so on. No, the business process modeling notation-based process diagrams, process design, in conjunction with the business and IT teams coming together, they can actually do that. There are functionalities that are offered by this suite of solutions inside Signavio that can actually help do that. We will get into each of these components, but I mean, in a nutshell, right from documenting the processes to analyze the processes to simulate some of these processes even without implementing and see how whether the simulation in itself is throwing some results in terms of whether the process is designed properly or any additional, fixes to be done, tweaks to be done. And based on the tweaks, obviously we can improve the process. While improving also, you can automate the improvements. You don't need to even go and actually fix those processes. If you think that the processes are running not very optimal way, you can even automate the improvements by integrating that with other peripheral SAP components like SAP Build Process Automation and so on in other platforms, and eventually roll out the process. And not just that, even at the operations level also, you can monitor the process and take each of these together as a combination. And then sits in the center, there is something called Process Collaboration Hub, which actually kind of is the key component that encompasses all of these areas, all of these activities that can be performed. Also, last but not the least thing, Signavio being a process-driven transformation suite, it is not just meant to be confined only for SAP solutions, only for SAP implementations, but also can be extended to non-SAP solutions. If some of your integrations are running in some non-SAP functionalities, non-SAP products, and then maybe a logistics solution is running elsewhere, maybe a different solution is running in a non-SAP application elsewhere. All of these can be combined together. The entire process can be seen end-to-end across the products, SAP and non-SAP. And that is where this actually comes truly handy. We will get onto the each of these individual details in the next slide. Here, I would like to request my colleague Eknath to jump in and take us through each of the components. Eknath, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, thanks a lot, Sridhar. So just to introduce myself, so I'm Eknath, based out of Chicago. So I'm part of the business consulting arm, the business team of YASH, and I lead the Signavio practice in YASH. Right. So again, based on our experience, so I kind of being in business consulting play the role of being a bridge between the business as well as the technology, right? And Signavio kind of helps enable that, making it a proper bridge between the business as well as the technology transformation that we carry out. So again, as Sridhar has said, so we want to give an overview of individual module, go a bit deep in this particular session, and followed by again live demos in our subsequent webinars. So again, there are under the process modeling and journey modeling, so there are two key modules. So again, the way Signavio is being designed is there are various modules, and based on the use case, based on the maturity of the automation, the relevant modules can be enabled. Right? So we don't have to enable all the modules at all times, and can be enabled as per the need and as per the various stages of our transformation. So I'll start off with process manager, which is and process manager and journey modeler. So these are two key modules which will help during our process modeling, which is as using process manager, we'll be typically organizations manage all their process using say visuals or using lucid charts, etc., or in PDFs, right? So all the businesses maintain those process maps in a offline mode, whereas Signavio being again a cloud-based tool, the advantage that we'll get is we'll be able to model all of this process in a BPMN compliant, like a business process compliant process maps, and can be hosted directly on cloud. Right. So the advantage that we'll get is all the process across the organization, no matter how big the organization is, right? Like we have looked at clients where again spread across 40 odd countries, having multiple departments. So how do you make sure that everyone has access to those process models? How do you make sure that everyone is consistently maintaining those process maps across those geographies? So that's where process manager kind of helps in terms of standardizing those processes and keep maintaining those process maps in a single repository, which is easy to access for business as well as the technology stakeholders. And on top of it, we'll be able to capture a lot of rich information on this process manager, whether it is if I want to know for a particular task or a particular process, which role is performing that, which particular IT system is being involved in that. So is it an automated task? Is it a manual task? So we'll be able to capture a lot of rich information, which typically has to be maintained in nodes or has to be maintained outside the tool, like let's say in Visuals and other things. Whereas Process Manager enables us to capture all that information in a easy to consume format and a cloud-based tool, right? So that's the key use case of again Process Manager. And coming to Journey Modeler, the way it happens is now that we have a process, if we want to see from the lens of a customer, or it can be other stakeholders as well, whether it is through suppliers or employees. So taking the lens of that particular customer and then looking at the journey, right? So how is the experience of that particular stakeholder along the process, right? So in that way, we'll be able to understand, not just follow the process, but we'll be able to understand the implications of designing our process and following our process and the overall experience of that particular customer or any other stakeholder. Okay? So that's where we can use Journey Modeler. And on top of it, we can lay down various such additional attributes, whether it is the KPIs that we want to track in terms of the adoption, like the metrics of customer satisfaction, or all of those metrics can be overlaid on customer journey model, bringing and integrating with various other tools that you have, and thereby having a seamless experience of a customer experience across the journey. So I'll move on to the next one. So again, I plan to cover the initial overview of each of the modules and then jump into the tool. Again, feel free to pose your questions here. So we'll try to answer during the session, or else we'll come back. So the next modules, set of modules that we have is process intelligence as well as process insights. I'll start with process insights. Again, Signavio being a SAP tool, one of the advantages that we get is if the organization is already using are on ECC or on SAP or S4HANA or any of the SAP products, we will be able to link to those systems and we'll be able to discover the process. So one of the advantage is if you want to understand what kind of modules are being used in my system. Again, organizations being very large, sometimes you lack the visibility in terms of what is being used in my existing SAP, right? So in that, process insights will become a key part, wherein we can link to the SAP systems, whether it is ECC or S4HANA or other SAP products, and we can link and based on the again the digital footprint that gets created in those systems, we'll be able to understand the performance of how those particular activities are carried out by those organizations, right? So that's the key advantage of process insight, and this is kind of instantaneous, right? So within a matter of hours, or so one of the advantages, we are not taking days or we are not taking months to arrive at these analysis. So this happens almost instantaneously, like within hours, within days, we'll be able to quickly understand which modules are we using, how much are we using, and how automated or how close are we with respect to best practices. And being a SAP product, it also overlays with what are the industry benchmarks, right? So let's say as an organization, if we are using a particular module, let's say a sales order creation. Now, how is our organization performing with respect to the industry benchmarks? Is it being used the same way in my industry? Again, across other SAP using organizations. So we'll be able to instantaneously know this and get a strong recommendations and very specific recommendations on how to improve our process. So that's on process insights. And then using the same digital footprint, say process intelligence is where it visualizes how we are performing the process, right? So these are kind of complementary. So process intelligence lays down in a visual way in terms of using the same data that is there, whether it is SAP, and it can be, and we can also link it to other non-SAP systems as well. And based on the timestamps, we'll be able to understand how the process is being followed, what are the various variations that are being followed in my organization. As an example, we may start off in the initial design, we may start off saying that, okay, I want a process to happen in a sequential manner, like step A, B, and C. Whereas we all know that in terms of in real life, there are a lot of other scenarios that we take in, right? What if a customer is a different type, right? Or based on the different customer type, different scenario, the process gets tweaked, and the process, I mean, there are different variations that get created in real life. So process intelligence kind of helps in terms of discovering all those variations, understanding how exactly is it being performed on ground, thereby, again, it's like discovering our own process, right? So this also help if we don't know the process already, we'll be able to discover that particular process using process intelligence. Take a pause. Anything that Sridhar is going to add?
Before that,
Yes,
one.
yes.
So I see Miss Teresa has raised her hand. Ma'am, if you have a question, so I would request if you can put it on the Q&A section, and we will try best answering it. Yeah.
So the only point that I would like to add from my side is, if you have some experience with other tool sets like a solution manager or a CALM, Cloud Application Lifecycle Manager, for example. Actually, towards the end of this presentation, there is a big picture that we wanted to also discuss. End to end, how does it look across various different products? I mean, how across various different solutions, and what exactly it takes to implement SAP S/4HANA, or for that matter, any other, what kind of tool sets carry, do activities only once and all the way till the end, how each of these are linked together. That big picture is also something that we would like to discuss. But as far as this one slide is concerned, the only point that I wanted to add is process insights component can give you a quick and I would not want to call the quick and dirty, but I mean something else, but a quick way of actually trying to get you an understanding of how good and how bad your processes are, where are some of the process pitfalls, I mean, that you should actually focus on. That kind of information, that kind of insight can be given for some key important processes. That's a very, very quick way of doing it. And process intelligence is a bigger way of mining, bigger way of analyzing your process, bigger but faster, of course, by just connecting it to your SAP or even non-SAP systems, or as a combination. There are some what do you call pre-built connectors that are already provided by Signavio, wherein you can connect that to SAP solutions by default, which is a native integration, and non-SAP solutions also, be it a Oracle ERP. I'm just taking some examples. Be it a non-ERP, but a non-SAP solution. So any of those things can be actually plugged. For many of these, I mean, there are pre-built connectors to, for example, a Salesforce, there is a pre-built connector. ServiceNow, there is a pre-built connectors. There are some custom connectors also that you can actually, come up with to connect to a custom solution. But with the idea to extract some data, that is also very, very templatized by Signavio, for at least for SAP systems already. You can simply just connect it, select the template, so automatically the data flows in, and then it puts together the entire intelligence, the analysis in an intelligent way. And also the entire process intelligence component will definitely give you, which we will see shortly, as to how that process intelligence looks like, what all various steps that we are missing internally. All that, I mean, can be seen. So, I mean, those are the two quick things. Process insights is a simplistic way, but is a short way of actually doing a quick analysis of your process. But process intelligence is a big, broader, but quicker still way of actually analyzing your process. But we will see that going forward. Eknath, okay.
Yeah, thanks, Sridhar. So I'll move on to the next ones, which is process governance and process automation, right? So these are the workflow and automation solutions of modules of Signavio. So again, a typical use case will be, now that we maintain all these process maps in the process manager, maintaining everything in cloud. Now, process governance kind of enables in terms of making sure that whatever is being documented is being approved by the relevant stakeholders. Now we can custom make those workflows, get it approved, so that whatever process that is being documented by the, say, a business process management team is being vetted, is being reviewed, and is being approved by those keys, the major stakeholders, the business process leads or the product owners, right? So process governance helps build these workflows. It has inbuilt features in terms of triggering an email. Let's say once we model the process and then we publish a process governance kind of picks it up, sends those automatic reminders to get it reviewed and approve it in the system. And we have a very clear tag within Signavio, which says, okay, this is a process which has been approved, and this is a process which was approved in a previous version. Now that there were a few more changes that happened post the last approval that happened. So in that way, we'll be able to track and have a strong version control over it, as well as have the approvals get it done via the system. Again, this is one of the use case. We can build various workflows and also using process automation, which is we will be able to automate some of these tasks as well, right? So it can be automated to actually manage the workflow. Let's say if I want to send a reminder to a customer about or send a reminder for payments, etc. So we can actually trigger those emails. We can build those kind of workflows as well using SAP build process automation, as well as a mix of combination of process governance. Right? So we can scale those workflows, and we can always make sure that the approvals will also help in terms of making the organizational compliance as well as regulatory compliance to ensure that, yes, this is an approved workflow by a business and on this particular day. Right? So we can keep a version control over it. And supporting all of this, we have Process Collaboration Hub. So this is where we will be able to expand it to a larger business stakeholders or larger stakeholders within the organization, which is, again, if I want to get a process model review, or if I want to get those insights, right? So once we carry out the process mining, if we want to get more insights or understand the, take it to the business users and get their views, right? So that's where process collaboration comes in, wherein the process models can be published and can be shared via the collaboration hub, wherein it will be more of a view kind of an access, and they'll be able to comment on it, and through which we can source all the inputs. And through collaboration hub, all the various stakeholders can actually access the latest and the latest process maps or process models or the process intelligence or insights that has been developed, thereby having a single source of truth at all times. So we don't have to constantly share over emails in terms of these process maps that is being generated. It's always available. The latest version is always available, accessible across the organization, across geographies. So in that way, it will give full visibility across the organization. And yeah, so we want to now link it back to SAP implementation, SAP transformations, right? So one of the strong use case is of using Signavio is during the transformation journey, right? So these individual modules are helpful during the at various stages of coordination, as well as especially when you're doing it transformation. It could be an S/4HANA transformation, it could be other digital transformations as well. So Signavio has a strong use case to ensure that we are reducing the time in terms of we are saving the time of business stakeholders to focus on the key activities and collaborate in a much efficient manner throughout the transformation journey. So we want to take an example of an S/4HANA transformation, and then look at how what are the various challenges that are that come in during and when what we see based on our experience, right from prior to the implementation and during the implementation. So after post implementation, what are the various challenges that we have, right? And then see how Signavio can actually support in terms of solving some of these challenges. Right? So pre-implementation, if I want to start off with the key challenges, as we all know, one, there is a case for change, right? So everyone, there is a typical challenge in terms of, okay, why are we moving to a new solution? Is it really worth it, right? And is there a business case? Whatever I'm investing, do I get the returns for moving into the new system? If it is SAP S4, it could be various types, right? It could be an implementation, it could be a migration, or different type of approaches. So what approach should I follow? So you would need a business case and then buy-in from various stakeholders even before we start the project, right? And there's also constraints in terms of budget and resource availability, right? Especially if you want to understand the current process, understand what is the level of maturity at the initial stage. Either one typical way is we conduct workshops, understand from various business stakeholders in terms of what they have been, what's the current stage of it, right? Whereas, again, so that will become a constraint typically in the S4HANA or any large transformation, which is time is of essence, especially getting the business time or the key SMEs time during the implementation, right? And again, there are other challenges in terms of having the master data which is clean prior to the transformation, and which is the right implementation or which is the right solution that I should follow for my transformation journey. So these are pre-implementation challenges that will typically come up, which again is more of the phase 0 part of it, right? And then coming to during the implementation stage, so that's where once we decided that, okay, yeah, we are going ahead with the transformation, there are various challenges that will come up because again, time and having the time from the business stakeholders, having collaboration alignment throughout the project is very key, and making sure that the visibility is there throughout the implementation, so that whatever changes are being made, whatever is getting made, there is an alignment with the key stakeholders and across the broader organization in terms of why we are changing, so that once we implement it, everyone will adopt to that system, right? So the key challenges that we see are, again, as I was saying, a broader alignment on the to-be design. So whatever is getting designed, do we have alignment across the stakeholders? Do we have their buy-in, right? So that buy-in that we can get through based on involve them through the sign-off process, right? So are we getting the timely sign-offs? Are we able to understand the trade-offs in terms of, should I follow the best practice process? Should I follow whatever has been being followed in my organization earlier? Should I, again, if it's a large organization across globes, so should I maintain a global template and make sure that that is being followed across the organization, or have a different process for my different geographies? So understand the trade-offs, which will be important in trying to get that alignment again with the business stakeholders, right? So that will be some of the key challenges that we face during the implementation, and also making sure that while we are moving to this new system, are the resources or are the various employees getting skilled or getting having the right knowledge to actually perform the activity once the implementation is done. So those are some of the key challenges that we have observed during the implementation. And post implementation is where, we typically, again, most of the success or the most of the realization of the value comes in, wherein whatever has been envisaged, are we actually realizing the benefits? Like people are they adopting to this new system? Are they trained? Are the employees trained well? And are they using the new system, or are they going back to what they've been doing earlier, right? So in terms of whether are we realizing the benefits, so keeping a tab of it, tracking the right KPIs to make sure that, okay, and kind of course correct to make sure that the new system is being followed or not. So those are some of the challenges which actually makes or breaks the overall transformation, right? So whether we are actually using the particular system that is being designed. So these are some of the key challenges that we have observed during and I mean pre, during, as well as the post implementation of S4. So I'll try to link based on the various modules that we have seen on Signavio, and then link it back to how some of these challenges can be solved via Signavio. And as an example, we have taken an SAP Activate methodology, which has discover, prepare, explore, and realize, deploy, and run phases. This could be slightly different for various type of approaches, whether it is same migration, whether it is selective data transformation, etc. We are just taking one of the case in this scenario, wherein if using an SAP Activate methodology, right from discovering the process. So this is where, as we have earlier in our webinar, so we looked at the process insights, right? So if we are already on SAP, then we'll be able to connect it to our systems, understand the maturity level, and this will be instantaneous, right? So this is where we save a lot of time in terms of understanding what are we doing in the current automation, what are the various process, what's the maturity level, are we using all the modules that are there. So those kind of insights will be instantaneous, and which will help in our creating a business case for it. And also, being an SAP product, it will also overlay with the recommendations of S4, right? Not just understand the current state, but in the same using the process insights, it will make use of all the knowledge of the various best practices of across various organizations, like value lifecycle manager of SAP maintains what is the benefit that you'll get by using various modules of S4HANA. So we'll be able to instantaneously know what are the key modules that can be, what are the key modules of S4HANA, which will benefit that specific coordination, and instantly get a business case around it. As well as this will actually help us in terms of getting the right alignment across the stakeholders. So again, creating a case for change is how this will help, right? And not just process insights, we'll also be able to leverage process influence. So it's not just limited to my being an SAP shop already. It could be even if I have various other systems, we'll be able to leverage process influence, connect to their individual systems, and then look at what is my process that is being followed, right? So in that way, not just the SAP systems, we'll be able to link and then understand the current state of even before we take up the implementation process. So this is where I think we have been hearing plug and gain, and some of maybe hearing plug and gain approach, wherein the combination of process insights plus process intelligence is again a powerful way to take up this pre-implementation and then deciding on our implementation journey. And during the implementation is again where we will have limited time from the business. Now that there's a lot of change that will happen, so the business users have to perform what they've been doing on a daily basis, and also spend their time in terms of explaining their process and explaining what they want in the new systems, right? So they are always double booked. Any transformation, that's one of the key constraints that everyone has in terms of the time of all the key SMEs, key stakeholders, whether it is business or technology. That's where having a process manager or having best practices that are already loaded in Signavio will help in terms of easily understand the current process, as well as be able to articulate the best practices in the tool, and then take their reviews, inputs, and come up with a revised to be design. Whether it is, again, having a trade-off between should I follow best practice that SAP recommends, or what should I customize to meet my overall org level requirements, as well as are there any localized requirements that I have that I'll have to customize. So all of those discussions, trade-offs can be easily visualized being the workshops that gets conducted during this time of prepare, whether we call it as playback or whether the fit to standard kind of workshops. The process manager and having the a common base to actually discuss and debate is how Signavio will enable a faster process during the prepare and explore phase. And subsequently, once we use this for our to-be designs, we can also get it approved. So in that way, we can have timely sign-offs of all the process, so that there is alignment, there is clear clarity in terms of what is getting approved, and again, should we go ahead and do the design configuration changes, etc. So in that way, we'll have savings in terms of alignments, as well as a lesser time spent on coordination. And then it also helps in terms of the training part of us, right? So now that we have process maps and process manager and some of these features enable us to capture rich information. So in that way, it will help during the training, right? So if it will be very clear to understand which system should I perform this activity, what activity should I perform. So we can link it to our LMS system, or we can link it to like enable now if we are using an SAP training tool or a learning management tool. So in that way, we can link the trainings to the process maps at a task level, and then which will then be used by individual business users to clearly understand what is it that they have to get trained, and also get a larger understanding of the overall process, not just the key activities that they are doing. So these are some of the benefits in terms of and how SAP kind of helps during the implementation phase. And then comes the run part, where the process intelligence will again kick in. Now that we have reconfigured it, using process intelligence, we'll be able to keep a track of how the process is being performed. Are there new variations that are getting created? And then it could be a result that, okay, there is some variant that was not envisaged during the implementation phase. And then we go ahead and factor in that particular variant as well in our design. Or it could be that maybe a particular stakeholder is not performing that particular task because of lack of training or lack of awareness of that new tool. So in that way, process intelligence clearly showcases the variants that are being followed, and that can eventually be used to get the adoption levels increased, get the to be process redesigned if required. So again, I'll take a pause. Maybe Sridhar, if you want to add anything.
No, I mean, basically, in summary, without getting into each of these points again, I mean, basically, Signavio has functionalities that can be used across all the implementation phases, right from discover all the way to run. And also, we will get into one of the big pictures that I was talking about towards the end of this. There, we could also explain how one way of designing the processes will help all the way to the end of the implementation, be it for the end user training or be it for the operations purposes. We'll quickly see that later. But I mean, in short, the key takeaway from this slide is all the typical challenges that we have seen in the previous slide as far as SAP S/4HANA implementation is concerned. Signavio has tool sets, subcomponents that are useful, that are necessary to be implemented across all these phases. I mean, we will be definitely able to use each of these components to, overcome all the challenges that we spoke earlier.
Sure. So I'll just spend maybe, yes.
Sridhar, Eknath, before we dive into the demonstration of Signavio tool, a quick feedback poll for our audience, just to see are we on the speed of the webinar. This would actually help us to fine tune our upcoming episodes. So if you guys can just vote for this, and it would take 30 seconds for you. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Over to you, Eknath.
Yeah, thanks. So I'll again spend maybe like 2 to 3 minutes on this tool. Again, a quick glimpse while we'll try to cover in detail in our subsequent webinars. So just want to give a glimpse of the tool. How does it look like? And some of the benefits that I was referring to, right? Which is, so this is the process manager. Again, it's a cloud-based tool, right? So wherein we'll be able to document the process, and some of this process of the SAP best practices process are already available. So we don't have to, again, kind of draw from scratch. We can use this and then customize it in the way the organizations actually follow that process. So all of those BPM and terminologies are available for the process manager. And some of the key benefits, right? So we'll be able to visualize some of these parameters of which IT system is being followed in which of my task level. And we'll be able to capture rich information, which is otherwise not so easy to maintain, which is who is the process owner, what is the, let's say, which geography is this particular process applicable for, and in terms of who are the other key stakeholders, right? Whether it is business process lead, whether it is a product owner, if we are undergoing the transformation, and which geography, which country is being followed across which site, because there could be some processes which are across the geography where there could be very specific processes that are applicable for a site level. And we can also attach various documents. It could be training documents, right? So if I want to know the training or what should I do to perform this activity, we'll be able to link it to enable now, and then the user will be able to easily get trained on that. So in that way, rich information can be stored across each of the tasks and across each of the diagram. And this can now be published, right? So now I'll just quickly jump to Collaboration Hub. So this is where it can be published, right? So we can see that this is not an editable one. This is where we can involve a larger stakeholder group, and it could be the business process leads. It could be the team who is working with in the individual departments who is following this process, and they'll be able to quickly understand the process, and they'll have the latest version at all times once it is published. And on top of it, they'll be able to comment, right, in terms of getting the, if the process change or if a particular variation is not being captured, we'll be able to get those review comments, pass it on back to our business process team, and get the processes always up to date. So in that way, Collaboration Hub helps in terms of maintain up to date, and then get the visibility across all the stakeholders. And maybe a 1 minute on process influence while we go deep into this in a later session. But this is how process influence kind of visualizes our tool. It could be the current process even prior to implementation, or post implementation. Once the business users start using it, we'll be able to visualize this. As an example, how many of the steps are being followed via say in this case, say via quotation tool, or how many of them are getting followed without a quotation. So in that way, we'll be able to visualize this very easily in terms of the count, as well as we'll be able to visualize it via the times, right? How much time is it being taken between these steps? So in a quick overview of the tool, we can pause because of the time. So we will definitely focus in detail on these tools in the subsequent webinars. I'll hand it back to Sridhar to give a high-level overview of the big picture view that you are referring to.
Thanks, Eknath. So, I kind of have been teasing about this slide, right? So for some time. See, if you have participated in some transformations, or if you have participated in some implementations, forget about transformations, and be it as ECC implementations, or even before some customers, hardly anybody is on 3.x series of SAP systems anymore, but some customers still on ECC. But a lot of customers that we have noticed is what they are running in ECC and peripheral systems where the business processes are running is not in sync with the underlying documentation that they would have maintained in some or the other system, be it Visio, using Visio, Aries, PowerPoint presentations, Word documents, and so on and so forth. There is always a gap, right? There is always a catch-up on the documentation that happens. Over a period of time, at the time of initial implementation, everybody does a beautiful documentation, but over a period of time, when the ECC systems and the underlying processes are getting changed, people may or may not have enough of time to go back and update the process. Update the process diagrams, rather, update the process flows, wherever those, in whatever the format those are in. That has been a perennial problem and a problem that we have seen almost in every customer. So one of the key things that we also need to understand is it is important for us to keep our processes, process flows up to date, especially those in sync with what is running in the background systems, right? Be it S4, be it ECC, be it non-SAP systems. If not, we would have challenges at the later stage. What processes are running? What is to be tested? How do we test? If I'm actually implementing a mini project after a initial implementation is done, what all processes are already there in the system that are going to be impacted by this new implementation? All these issues would come in unless until we keep all these in sync. Now, it has been a difficult situation for a lot of customers and a difficult problem also to tackle with, primarily because the tool set that was offered all these days by SAP was also not very user-friendly. When I say user-friendly, I mean, I'm referring to the context of solution manager. I'm sure some of you have used solution manager in that context of documenting processes, which is called as solution documentation in that context. And using the same, process to, identify the scope for testing, and using solution manager itself sometimes, using focused build sometimes, using some other tool set sometimes, probably you would have used testing and maybe promoted and eventually transported the working processes into production, right? I mean, that would have happened. And also when it comes to end user documentation, we have seen the actual process running in S4 and the documentation maintained somewhere may not be in sync with what is going on in in the end user documentation. So these things are a lot of times they are not in sync. And more importantly, sometimes, I mean, also because of the fact that different types of tool sets which are not very integrated, not very seamlessly talking to each other, kind of, I mean, a service now is being used for, let us say, incident management purposes, ITSM functionalities. So, I mean, ECC implementation is done, people are using it, a ticket is raised by some users to make some change to the business process that has been implemented. The process documentation is not up to date because process documentation sits in some tool which has no connection with ServiceNow, and ServiceNow may or may not have connection with S4 or ECC to bring all of these together. These kind of things can really be tackled, I mean, in an end-to-end picture. That is what we wanted to show you. A utopic scenario, utopia, right? So, I mean, if these things are implemented in this manner, I mean, and probably this is the, greatest and the greatest way of implementing all these tool sets to tackle all these problems. How do we start? Okay, LeanIX has been added only off late to our diagram also because of the acquisition of LeanIX by SAP recently. But even with or without that, start with a Signavio solution. Document your processes there. Okay, that is what we are showcasing as design the processes. For example, I'm starting there. I'll come back to the analyze process later on. Anyway, it is a cyclic process, but if you are talking about a greenfield implementation, that is where you would start, right? I mean, completely afresh to SAP also. Design the process, or any ECC or any ERP implementation. In such a case, I mean, design the process. You would want to do it. Where do you do that? I mean, typically the go-to tool and the recommended tool is Signavio. And then moving on to building that solution. Basically, building as in you have to now design the solution and then build the solution. That is where the realize phase comes in. The initial design process and then the realize phase. In the realize phase, what you would need to do is to, transfer the processes that were designed using a BPMN notation in Signavio. You can kind of automatically bring those processes into a tool set like Solution Manager, tool set like Cloud ALM. Cloud ALM is the new Solution Manager type of system, right? So the SaaS solution from SAP. Actually, that is much, much better than Solution Manager in various different ways. Your maintenance is also very limited, and new functionalities are automatically brought over because that being a SaaS solution from SAP and so on. And a lot of functionalities for governing the overall implementation tool set is also available right from your bringing the documented processes from Signavio to Cloud ALM or Solution Manager. Separate those out by global and local template-based processes. You can actually do that within that. And then you can actually hand it over to testing or configuration and testing, building and testing. Where is building? I mean, building happens in the backend S4. Testing happens in backend S4, but testing tool could be a Cloud ALM, could be a Solution Manager, could be a Tricentis. Tricentis has different flavors again, TTA, Tosca, and so on. All of these can be used. But I mean, remember one thing, we are talking about designing the process that is going to be implemented only once so far, which is done in Signavio by a combination of business and IT teams. And the same process are being kind of transferred through the native integration layers between these products. And once that is done, deploy the solution. Where do you deploy? I mean, basically deploying the solution is nothing but eventually your S4 processes that are configured being moved to your production system. Once that is done, or just before that, sometime, I mean, you would also want to train your end users. Now, where do you train your end users using what? They need to also know the documentation. They also need to see, feel the processes, feel the process flow diagrams, all that, which was designed once in Signavio, that were same processes were brought over to the next set of the tools, can also be brought over automatically to Enable Now. There is another tool set called Enable Now, primarily used for user training, change management functionalities for end users, and so on and so forth. But the same processes are being brought over. So in a way, you design your process, draw your process only once, and use those throughout the life cycle of the process implementation, testing, and user training. That is where you would actually see the real impact. I mean, if these tool sets are properly implemented while the S4 is going on, or just before the S4 is being implemented, so that all these tool sets can govern the end-to-end implementation process, and you can truly reap the benefits of using all these tool sets. Now, after the go live, after the implementation is done, you would continue to receive process changes. You would continue to implement process improvements. But how do you identify those process improvements, right, in the first place? You have to analyze your processes, the way they were designed and being used in backend S4. And then you would want to understand, just the way, I mean, Eknath was showing process intelligence, right? I mean, earlier, a create sales order process was supposed to have these process steps in that order. Are people following the same order or not? If not, I mean, how do we go back and do that? So that is done once again in Signavio using the analyze process concept. And then you analyze the process, you enhance the process based on the feedback and the intelligence output that is coming out. And then you do that in a cyclic fashion. This is how the entire end-to-end big picture ideally should look like if these are all, if these are supposed to be, I mean, if you want to leverage the exact tool set, that to the true and the fullest potential. This is the big picture. This is how the tool sets are to be implemented, in short.
Thank you, Sridhar.
Hey, Naveen, I saw a question. I mean, let me quickly read that and try answering that question as well. What are some of the challenges that organizations typically face when integrating Signavio into their SAP S/4HANA landscape, and can they be addressed? In short, we have not seen a lot of challenges so far. I mean, because see, Signavio is a SaaS solution. It sits in SAP's data centers or wherever, right? I mean, we get the URL of that Signavio solution. There are pre-built connectors that are already given by Signavio to S4. So, I mean, you need to, use those pre-built connectors and pre-built adapters. Connector is for establishing the connectivity, and adapters are for, pulling some data from S4 to Signavio for various different purposes like analysis or mining and whatnot. You can actually do all that, I mean, in a very, very seamless and a straightforward manner. In one of the upcoming live demos, which is in the next session itself on 14th December, we would also like to showcase that. How do you establish the connectivity using the pre-built connectors and quickly use that data that we are bringing over from SAP S4 to Signavio, and how do we use that for process mining and understand how good and bad the processes are being executed. All that can be seen in a live demo in the upcoming webinar that is scheduled for 14th December. Over to you, Eknath. Naveen.
Right, Sridhar. I see one more question. That is, can you provide insight into the scalability and performance of consideration when using Signavio large S/4HANA transformation implementation?
Okay. We are short on time, but I'll quickly answer that. First of all, when you are buying Signavio licenses, I mean, there is some amount of dedicated space and amount of data that you can actually analyze that is counted in GBs is typically given as part of your Signavio licensing. By and large, I do not exactly remember the initial amount of the size of the space that is given to you, but that in itself is so very huge that, I mean, by and large, that initial license-based space that is given is by and large good enough. for any of your process analysis purposes. So, I mean, you can simply ignore that that is going to be a problem at all. No, it is not. We have seen that, as I was telling, we actually used a Signavio instance for a customer for analyzing some close to 1,100 processes across various 40 different countries and whatnot, and documenting those processes and so on. So we have not seen that as a problem. So I'm sure, I mean, in your case also, that would not be a problem by and large. But just in case those initial licenses are not sufficient, you can actually ask for some additional space just in case that is needed. But we don't really see that happening in the in many customers.
Great, Sridhar. So thank you so much, Eknath. Thanks, Sridhar. Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our first episode. And on screen, if you see that we have 3 more episodes which are coming up. Our experts did try covering the overview of SAP Signavio in the first episode, and they would want to deep dive into the other process models. The episode 2, which speaks on the process mining and continuous process improvement leveraging SAP Signavio, which is on 14th December. And then followed by, we have process modeling and documentation with SAP Signavio leveraging SAP best practices. This is again happening on 11th Jan. And lastly, on 25th Jan, we have process analysis and optimization technique leveraging SAP Signavio process insight with a live demo, of course. So do join us for all these episodes. Our experts have a lot of knowledge. They were part of a lot of large transformations and projects. So this would definitely help us and to grow together. Yeah. Lastly, I would want to express my heartfelt appreciation to our esteemed expert for their valuable presence and contribution. They have definitely impressed us and enlightened. We welcome any further inquiries or feedback. You can always reach us at info@yash, that's info @yash.com. It's there on the screen. Till then, thank you once again for being part of the event. See you folks for next time. That's on 14th December. Do log in for the second episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.